And good evening, fellow wafflers, and welcome back. It is Monday. It is time to hang out and just generally waffle about stuff on a Monday evening. Welcome one and welcome all to the Monday evening waffle stream, as usually called the sci-fi and fantasy writing stream, which is what we attempt to try and do. Is talk about that sort of stuff. Apologies, I still haven't got rid of my aura of power. I'm still working on that. I haven't quite managed to find the same settings as I had before I changed the things. So I still have a curious, particularly if I move slightly. It's not an artifact of a green screen. It is in fact magic powers, which of course is is the science fiction and fantasy explanation for strange things. I still think green screens are just huge fun. I can't get over the novelty of them, but there we go. Anyway, welcome one and welcome all to the sci-fi fantasy writing stream. That's very good. It's definitely an aura of power. Or maybe I'm a force ghost. Hey, if you strike me down, I shall become more waffly than you can possibly imagine. So you want to be careful by doing that. Anyway, right, who have we got on the stream? Mad Monksoft is here, Haunted Liv is here, Commander J1988 is here, Glenn is here, Commander Derefo, Dr. Quest MD is here, Shiny Red Flag. Wave the shiny red flag. Wintermute GB is here. Feather of the Crow is here. Sean is here. Hello, Sean. Good to see you. DJ Squibby is here as well. The Arrakis is here. Fighting off the invasion of the Harkonnens. I'm going to have to give myself a new joke, aren't I? Lucky Luigi is here as well. Fantastic. Lovely to have you all here, guys. Drew's Magic Cat is finally out the back. Yeah, so I obviously do have magic powers. I am a wizard. Yeah, there we go. Anything you'd like doing? If only. I think magic would, just in general terms, magic would be a stupendously dangerous thing to have, wouldn't it? Particularly if it was sort of J.K. Rowling style formulaic magic, where you could just sort of say a thing and it happens. You know, like what's the one where you summon things? It's Accio thing, isn't it? I mean, imagine if you were on the top floor of a building and you just said Accio dishwasher. It slams into the side of your house and takes out the wall. And also, how does the magic know precisely what you mean? You know, if I say, you know, I don't know, Accio book. I mean, what does it select? Does it know what I'm thinking? You know, I mean, I'd be Accioing lunch. Accio sandwich, Accio packet of crisps, Accio Diet Coke. I don't know. Urban Spark says Yo 7. Sorry, wrong stream. No worries, fella. It's okay. Talking of J.K. Rowling and magic hats, the sorting hat's got to be awful for life. Especially with all those children, yeah. So yeah, so I did CO £3 disco meal. I think we can do better than that, don't we? I mean, you want Accio caviar, but yeah, what type of caviar? You know. And if you just say Accio soft drink, I mean, does it know you like Diet Coke, or do you? Yeah, are you going to get a Tango? I mean, what are you going to get? Yeah, all these questions need answering. So he is Merlin, after all. That explains the whole future knowledge and speaking riddles to Arthur. Yes, I suppose it does. I wouldn't be a very good wizard, I think. I'd attempt to be a wise and mystical, you know, like wizards obviously have to be, but I would almost straight away start mucking about with things, causing mayhem. I think we oddly enough, we've been watching the Marvel thing on Disney Plus, which is Loki. He's got his own show now. And me and Loki are very like this. I'm definitely a Loki kind of Accio cheap petrol, yes. Petroleum expensivo. Dear, quite funny. So well, it's not quite funny actually. The price of test fuel and everything, it's insane. But so Haunted Love's actually got the law thing. The law says you actually have to picture the thing you want in your mind when casting it. So there we go. Okay, so there is actually that's good. There's a good law explanation. So okay, that's good. I can see that every one of us here would end up in the TVA. I quite like the TVA. I thought that was really quite funny. that there's basically a bunch of auditors looking after time, basically making sure that everybody stays on track. Having been an auditor in part of my life previously, you know, when you turn up at a company with a big basically checklist and go, right then, prove to me that you're doing your job properly. Everybody hates auditors, okay? And by nature, you have to be quite meticulous. I mean, I'm not bad at being meticulous with it when needs come to it, but you know, you also had to dispense with a sense of humour in many situations, which I wasn't so good at, unfortunately. Yeah, so well, it was funny, but no, I quite like the TVA. I like the fact that they were there to sort of police the time system, and basically they could make some sort of executive decision. No, the decision you made has just mucked up the timeline, and you're getting whacked off it for the decisions you made, even if you didn't know what the outcomes of those decisions were. Can you imagine a Drew visualising something in his mind without being distracted? No, that is an impossibility. Orders of time, obligatory. Pratchett did it first. Well, I suppose that's true. Yeah, Pratchett had those sort of things, didn't he? Those kind of things. I mean, Pratchett did hats as well, so I can't even be original with hats. But yeah, all that sort of stuff is quite good fun, isn't it? Dear. Yeah, so low-key, yeah, I as a wizard, I would be very quickly, you know, just mucking about and what can this magic actually do then? Let's do some scientific tests, or pseudo-scientific tests, only the ones that are interesting. You know, so you know, I'd want to know where, you know, if one person casts a fire spell and another person casts a kind of make water spell, which one wins? And do we suddenly have an infinite supply of energy? Because, you know, we could be boiling the water, making steam, and driving energy off it. Where do the ones get their power to, you know, to grab this stuff from? From whence does the energy come? You know, if I cast a fireball from my my wand, where's that energy come from? What what is the fireball composed? Yeah, where does it come from? Does the wand spit out a vast amount of flammable liquid and then ignite it, or does it just cast it into, you know, existence from somewhere else? Does it pinch the fire from somewhere else that's on fire? You know, the same with the water. Does the water get siphoned off somewhere else? So is there somebody somewhere sitting in a bath on the opposite side of the planet, and somebody says, "Ha ha, water spell," and somebody's sitting in their bath, so they go, where it's like, what happened? So, you know, and, you know, is there an inverse reaction? I think that's very good. Do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to waffle. Just want to know. Very good. Hello, Chris Viking as well. That's good stuff. Good to see you, fella. Magnificent Mako is here as well. So we've got some of the old school crew, which is excellent. Urban Spark says midi-chlorians, I suppose. Yeah, I think Patch's auditors and the TVA are from the same year. Oh, it's magic, Drew says, luckily, Luigi. In Babylon 5, the Techno mages had all different methods to cast this. But see, I just think it's the waffle is strong in this one. I think it's just interesting. You know, how, you know, does magic need to have any rules, or does it not? I mean, we talked about this at length in you know, lots of times before, haven't we? But I wouldn't mind writing a fantasy novel, I think, where the rules of magic were that if you summon some fire, I don't know, you know, you have a magic spell which is a fireball. It's somewhere else. Something's cooled down dramatically, or maybe you slurp fire from a certain, I don't know, volcano or something, which will probably last quite a long time, wouldn't it? You know, if you're only taking your heat in small doses from a volcano, that's probably going to last, yeah, effectively forever. So you're okay. And if you cast your water spell such that it sort of siphons off a bit of the ocean at a time, then again, probably nobody's ever going to notice, are they? Other than, you hosed me down with salt water. Where did that come from? Or you could take it from another dimension. There's always the other dimension, I suppose. That's the thing, or a parallel world, maybe, or something like that. Or maybe there's just a vast repository of magical stuff somewhere that magic feeds off. I don't know. I just think, yeah, if if it was a zero-sum game, i.e., you know, if you took some fire from somewhere else has been deprived of fire. The only, on a slightly serious note, I haven't written my own fantasy novel series yet. I've kind of got it in my mind to do one at some point. And I had this idea that, and I'm sure somebody else must have done this before, so somebody may know, because I'm sure, I mean, there's very, 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 very difficult to come up with original ideas in anything nowadays. But I wondered if maybe magic could be, you have to draw something out of the environment that you're in. So, for example, if you're in a damp environment, it's quite easy to summon water. So let's say it's really, really misty and, you know, boggy and swampy, then summoning some water to your whim using magic would probably not be all that difficult. Likewise, if you're in an electrical storm, being able to channel the lightning, maybe, that would work. Whereas in those conditions, maybe summoning up some fire would actually be really, really tricky, because you haven't got the kind of potential difference to manage. So I don't know. Something like that maybe is an idea for how magic, not that it has to work, but it has to have some sort of rationale behind it, so that, you know, really top wise wizards would know how to manipulate things to best effect, that sort of thing. So there's a sort of, you know, I don't want to say Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, because I think that's been used before. But yeah, you know, you'd have to learn your environment, understand your environment in order to be most effective at magic. I don't know. Would ice spells come from the ninth circle of hell like Dante's, or from somewhere? I don't know. I mean, things like that just sort of makes you think, doesn't it? I like in Darkness and Hell, all the types of magic get their power from specific sources, other planes, elementals, nature, in the case of magic from the life itself, leaving the world. Yeah, so I quite like the idea of there being a, you know, a credit and a debit side to magic. If I ever do write a fantasy, you know, that if your use of magic is having an effect, whether it's large or small, it's having an effect somewhere else, and you might have to. There might be some kind of accountability for that. I quite like that idea. It's a sort of magic karma system, you know. If you've cast a fireball, somebody else is freezing to death, or you have to summon something from your environment, and you basically use up stuff in the environment in order to cast magic, which has an effect on the environment. I don't know. Whether that would work or not, whether it would actually make it into a meaningful storytelling thing, I don't know. It's just something I quite fancy trying. All magic comes from hand-wavium. The bill becomes due. Well, I kind of like that. The fact that if you're going to use a power of, you know, which, you know, magic is incredibly powerful in a lot of these stories. You know, there's some consequences to that. You can't just go around willy-nilly flying, you know, Accio Coca-Cola. You can't just do it without there being some sort of cost associated with it. Dru's new book, The Summoner, confirmed. In the Belgarion, they could summon demons which could take control if you're not careful. Yeah, so the unexpected consequences are quite good as well. Tea and biscuits, definitely. My ex exaggerated her frost magic by blowing her spells across. Ouch! Wow. Okay, that's quite interesting. In the fantasy series Mordant's Need, magic is based around mirrors open to other places or dimensions. In one bit, they need to get water past a siege and use a mirror that opens into. Okay, so that's quite a nice idea. That you effectively use sort of positional things in dimensions to alter things. And I've seen people hide in alternative dimensions, particularly mirrors. Mirrors are quite good. You know, as portals between one place and the other, that you can kind of take shortcuts to other places and things like that. That's quite good too. So, you know, things like that are interesting, I think, as options for, you know, to just give magic that little bit more framework and structure, which I think is quite appealing. At least I think it's quite appealing. But there we go. Anyway, how are you all day today? I've had a bit of an up and downy sort of a day, actually. We got we went off. Well, the reason I'm wearing my Batman logo is we went to see Batman on Saturday night, and actually it was a bit of an epic. It was a very long movie, but I quite enjoyed it. It was a little bit more cerebral than most sort of superhero villain type movies are. Batman's always very dark, other than the original 60s show, isn't it, where everything's just on a tilted floor. which I do quite like, with the kapow and the splats and, and all that sort of stuff. But the new Batman is and obviously no spoilers because it's out. I quite enjoyed it because it was dark and it was quite gritty, and it wasn't all about the sort of usual Batman-y stuff. It was almost kind of like a police procedural type sort of movie, but it was kind of 3 hours long. And there's some actually. I hope you did not wear your hat. And no, I didn't. I did think about it, but I didn't. Mirror magic is not as good as wardrobe magic. Now, wardrobe magic is incredibly powerful, isn't it? So yeah, Dr. Question. He does. He definitely displays some. There's a bit of thinking going on, and there's some puzzle solving and all that sort of stuff. Rather than the usual, right, whip out the latest bat gadget to solve the thing. There wasn't so much of that actually, which was nice. There are some gadgets obviously, but it's not quite so good in that kind of thing. So but it was 3 hours long. It was a long old movie. It did feel like it dragged a bit in the middle for me, but that's because I'm getting old and I find the seats uncomfortable at a certain time. Could have magic use the energy of the universe so that every spell basically causes entropy, making the universe end sooner? Yes. Well, I think that's it. I mean, if you're able to tap into the universe, then I suppose one planet's use of magic probably wouldn't be all that dramatic, would it? I don't know. Maybe always magic sort of self-contained and all these sort of things. And I know it's magic, so it doesn't really matter. But and that's maybe not the point of the entire the story. But if I ever do a fantasy novel, I think I'm going to have to be very careful that the magic doesn't override the story, because one of the things I always admired about Tolkien was that actually in terms of a magical world, Tolkien's world is right up there with some of the best fantasy realms ever. He's kind of the father of the fantasy realm, isn't he, with what he did. And I know he borrowed a lot of ideas from other myths and legends that had gone before, but there can't be many fantasy fans who haven't heard of Tolkien, right? But his magic is very much it's not that incantation sort of magic that you find in there's some friends of my wife are coming around this evening, hence the doorbell. But there wasn't much casting of spells, is there? There's not much of that actually goes on in Tolkien. It's all more about the kind of the environment. There are magical talismans in the shape of the rings, and some of the swords are imbued with properties. And there are ghosts, and there are magic, strange creatures, and there are places where the environment holds special properties, like some of the rivers and things like that. So that is a nice way, I think, of the magic, but it's quite subtle magic, isn't it? Quite subtle magic in the way that Tolkien's world kind of works. Whereas a lot of other fantasy, the magic is much more overt, in the sense that you cast a spell of offence, or you cast a spell of defence, or all those sorts of things. And in things like Dungeons and Dragons, you also have the ability to shield things and cast fireballs and all that sort of stuff. And that's much more, I suppose, conjuring type magic, which Tolkien never really did. There's a few small bits where Tolkien does show that magic has offensive and defensive capabilities, but it's not all that often. And there's occasional muttering of spells. You're quite right, Chris Viking. There's occasional muttering of spells, but not very often. Not very often. And the power of the magic in Tolkien's environment seems to be, it gives you that impression of age and ancientness and longevity and all those kind of things. So I don't know. The bearded tree. I like it when the reader experiences magic for the first time in the first few Harry Potter books. I don't like it when magic becomes the norm and the reader gets used. That's a good point, actually, because there's a novelty to it, isn't there? When and you're sort of seeing it, I suppose, through Harry's eyes in the early Harry Potter books, because he's kind of like, what, you can do that with magic, and everybody else in the Wizarding world is like, well, yeah. where it's all new and novel to him as well, and you're sort of experiencing that as the reader, which you're right, is very, very good. There's only one Batman. It's Adam West. Yes, dear old Adam West. Larry and Niven's magic is a non-renewable resource. There used to be really powerful magic in the past, but at the time the story's magic is on the cusp of running out. See, that I like as well. The idea that magic is scarce and getting scarcer. That's quite a good dynamic as well. And that's been done in lots of stories. Where at the beginning of the story, then maybe magic is still reasonably plentiful, but they're aware it's running out. And then it becomes scarcer and scarcer and scarcer. To the end, it becomes so precious. And then a few people basically, it sort of does, or sometimes it has run out. As far as most people are concerned, there's tiny pockets left, and nobody really believes in it anymore, and those sort of thing. So yeah, so that is quite interesting. The different ways of framing magic and all those kind of things. I enjoy the type almost mythological or grounded in the world, the magic of Earthsea, almost the kind of magic that could be easily written off as superstition until the wizard does something. Yeah, the sort of soft magic. And you know, I've met a few people in my travels around, particularly in the UK, because it's quite common here, and it probably is around Europe as well. There are quite a lot of people who still practice what I suppose they would call magic, and particularly if you go to places in the West Country of the UK, and there's bits of it in Scotland I've noticed, and there's bits of it in Ireland, obviously, and it's, I suppose it's, and probably Wales too, though I don't know much about Wales. It's that sort of Celtic side of things, a bit of mysticism, and some of it is actually taken quite seriously. And I've always skirted around the outsides of it. I never really spend much time researching it. One of these days I'd like to look at it a bit harder when I've got a bit more time. But it is definitely there, and there are people who practice it, and I don't know whether they claim to have any potency in it. I really don't know, but it is definitely there as a thing, which seems to sit quite uncomfortably with modern day life, but it's definitely there, so it's kind of quite interesting. In some novels, wizards have to be near ley lines of a sort to tap into their magic. Okay, that's a cool one as well. Ghost Riders like that. They can only use their powers so many times before they lose their connection with the spirit. So so built-in limitations that stop it becoming a plot device. That's quite good. I like the concept of magic tying to the user's life force or soul to each successive use. To perform magic, one must sacrifice a fraction of one's soul, which increases with more powerful magics. Powerful sorcerers would fade away if they reached too high with their ambitions. Yeah, so there's sort of inbuilt limitations on what you can do and what you can get away with. Gandalf does a lot of this. I think lots of his magic is just being very wise about the world, and the fireworks seem like magic, for example. Yeah, so the wise wizard who knows much is always is always quite good, isn't it? Pratchett's headology is rather clever, and there's also industrialization of magic as well. So so that stuff, it's fun to poke around with those ideas and sort of see if there's anything kind of new that can come out of those sort of thinking. So all kind of good stuff. All kind of good stuff. But yeah, anyway, so my week. So our car got busted on the weekend. After that was basically, we went out. We were going to go out to see Batman. So we'd all piled into the car, started the engine, tried to drive off, and the car wouldn't move. The automatic, because modern technology, the handbrake. Well, of course, it isn't a handbrake anymore because you don't use your hands to activate it. The electronic parking brake, to give it its correct name, had decided that it was going to stay on, and it wouldn't disconnect from the back of the car. On a normal car, you have a big lever in the middle of the car which you pull, and that puts the back brakes on so that the car doesn't move away when you're not in it. Okay, it was stuck in de-throttle mode. So anyway, if you've got one of these lever ones, what you do is you press the button and put the lever down, and it releases the brakes. It's a very simple system. I mean, but it works. It's worked pretty much since the invention of the motor car. And then in the 21st century, mankind decided, aha, that system that's worked flawlessly for decades, we're going to replace that with something that's prone to breaking down every so often. We have one of those cars, and the fact I think today you'll be lucky to find a car that doesn't have an electronic parking brake system if you've bought anything new within the last sort of 10 years. And so I had so anyway, there's nothing you could do about it. It would not. There was no way in the car to persuade the car to basically it says, oh, I've got a fault. My computer's telling me I've got a fault. We're not going anywhere. So we had to decamp, regroup, and get back into other cars in order to get to the cinema to watch Batman. But we made it. That was quite good. The EBP, as it's known to Land Rover owners as that bloody electronic part of exactly right. I didn't have a Ukrainian farmer with a tractor to hand. No, that was the other problem. So we were stuck. So fortunately, I found a very nice man who came out and fixed it for me today. But it did prompt some swearing on Sunday because, like, really, stupid car. Because it's like it's just overly complicated. It's like there aren't many things on a car that are simpler than the handbrake. Okay, it's a lever, right? It pulls a pair of cables, and those cables, when they're pulled, they squidge the brakes on. Okay, and when you release them, they've got springs, so they spring back, and then they let the brake off. But no. In our wisdom, we have decided to replace that system with a computer. Why? So that you press a button on the dashboard, which then makes a computer go zzz, and locks the brakes on, which needs two tiny little electric motors to do it, one on each brake, as I discovered. You don't need the cable anymore because it's just electronics. And the clever thing is then, of course, as you drive off, the brake can automatically release itself, saving you those that huge amount of time it takes you to go click dunk. Yes, there's a different kind of cable because there's an electrical cable. And the only benefit I assume it is basically so that the centre console between you and your passenger can hold another drink or something, or some extra junk. Instead of having a space for where the actual handbrake cable is. So I don't know. It's just one of those. The ironic thing is that we quite like our car. Okay, it's a very boring car. It's a Passat Estate. It's about the most boring car you could possibly imagine. Okay, if you got a kid to draw a boring ordinary car, they would draw a Passat. Okay, it's not sexy. It's not fun. It's not fast. But it's insanely practical. Okay, it's got good fuel economy. It carries a lot of stuff. It can get all four of us in it and take us anywhere we want to go. It's got air conditioning. It's nice. It's vanilla. Okay, in a world of cars, it's vanilla ice cream. It's nice, but it's not particularly exciting. And usually it's just generally reliable. Nothing has ever gone wrong on this car. The only things we've ever replaced are the tyres, the exhaust because it fell off once, and most of the electric parking brake system. So I just look at this and think, this is stupid. You've almost ruined a perfectly good car by overcomplicating it. It's unusual, actually. I think for people like Volkswagen to over-engineer a problem, because it's a stupid piece of over-engineering, right? It doesn't need to be there. There's no good reason for it at all, other than just to try to show off that you've got a button you press for the handbrake instead of the handbrake. So I was very upset about that because it let us down again. It just it caused us aggro, and it's a big, and it got me to thinking, which brings us slowly onto in the direction of the topic tonight, which isn't actually about wizards, although that's where we kind of started. It's helpful technology, that's right. Some urban spark, that's right. Somewhere someone else's car would just not stop. So somebody somewhere is cursing me because I've just driven over a cliff and died. It's all Drew's fault for getting his handbrake stuck. So I don't get the design thinking behind things like that. It's like, let's make something really, because there's no real benefit in convenience as far as I'm concerned, because it doesn't take me much longer to do the click. Oh, where's my hand? There we are. Click, dunk, boom. Handbrake is now off. I could drive away. To the one in the car where I have to go just, and then it goes zzz, and it says handbrake has been disconnected. What's most annoying is if I want to, even in my car, which is like 10 years old, if I want to move the car just a little bit up the driveway, say it's blocking the garage as it was today, and I want to move it backwards about 3 feet so I can open the garage and get stuff in and out of the garage. Okay, that's a fairly common thing that happens. Yeah, in my old cars, I get in, start the engine, take off the handbrake, put it in gear, reverse out. Okay, no, you can't do that in the Passat because it's a kind of newish car. It's not really. It's like it's 2008, so it's like 14 years old. No, Mr. Wagar, no, you can't just get in here because you haven't put your seatbelt on. I don't need to put my seatbelt on because I'm not going anywhere. I'm moving 3 feet. Nothing bad is going to happen to me in 3 feet, I hope. So no, all I want to do is I just want to put it into reverse. I want to leave the handbrake off, and I want to back it up 3 feet so I can get the garage open. That's all I want to do. Does the Passat want to help me do that? No, it doesn't. Okay, because it's like, bing, you haven't put your seatbelt on. I know I haven't put my seatbelt on. You haven't put the clutch down. Well, I will because I'm intending to move the car. But you can't take the brakes off until you put your clutch down and you've got your foot on the brake pedal. Why? The car's on the flat. I'm going to move it 3 feet. And I have this internal monologue with myself arguing with the computer, which of course gets me nowhere because the computer doesn't care. And even if it did care, it's not listening. And even if it was listening, it wouldn't care. So I don't know why I do that. I think that's because I'm slightly mad. Mad Monk said, what's the idea behind having to put the clutch down fully before you go? I don't know. Why does the clutch need to be down? It's like, it just says, when I get in the car and try and start the ignition, it just says, put the clutch down. It's like, why? It's like, I mean, if one day it said, if one day it said, hold your nose, or take off your hat, or wind all the windows down, or pop the bonnet, or eat a cheesecake, have a waffle. I don't know. Why does it need to put the clutch down? Yeah, at least it's always consistent. It always says put the clutch down. It doesn't say something else like touch. Put your hand on top of your head and pat your head whilst rubbing your tub. You know, or anything stupid like that. It just says put the clutch down. So I don't know. This just strikes me as stupidity embedded into computers. I know a lot of people who are able to injure themselves moving a car 3 feet. I suppose that's true. I don't know. German industry over-engineered a problem that was a godsend for the Allies in World War II. Well, that's true as well. Yes, yeah. I suppose maybe it's a German thing. I don't know. I tend to have always had German cars. The clutch business is to make sure the car does not lurch forward if it's in gear. Okay, so of course I was taught to make sure the car was in neutral before I started the engine. So maybe people don't do that anymore. So you don't bloody suddenly jump forward when you start and the bloody EBP is broken off. Yes, that's very true. Is there a computer in your car called Eddie by any chance? I think it should be. Now today, children, it's going to be our first day on a strange new planet. So I don't know. I don't like the nannyiness of it. It's like if I want to start my car without putting the clutch down, I damn well should be able to do it. No, computer says no. What is another example of that I got the other day? It's like, what do I have to do? I had to. We went to the pub. We went to the pub. Okay, we went to the pub. Now, what do you do? Not what you normally do in a pub. Okay, what do you normally do in a pub? You order a beer, right? Or a drink, depending on what you're getting. Okay, or maybe some food, maybe a bowl of chips. Okay. Now, in the olden days, you'd probably go to the bar, okay, and say, "Hello, can I have a beer, please?" Or the barkeep would basically come and sort of lean on the counter and go, "Yeah, what's today, sir?" And you go, "I'll have a beer." That's how things used to work. Okay. And I must admit, I'm not a great frequenter of pubs, but we went to this pub, and no, you don't go to the bar anymore. They've got an app for that. So you basically log into the pub's Wi-Fi network, and then it downloads an app onto your phone and says, "Welcome to the pub." Like, I know I'm here. And basically order it on your phone, and then you look at the table the way you are, and there's a number in the table, and you basically, I'm at table 18 or whatever it is, and you say pay for your thing, and you press go, and then they've got your order, and then 5 minutes later your beer turns up. And so I asked stupidly, as you do, I asked stupidly, what do you do? What do you do if you don't have a smartphone? when the guy eventually turned up with the drink, what do you do? What do you do if you don't have a smartphone? He kind of looked at me with the same sort of expression on his face as if somebody had asked him, "Do you skin live weasels in this establishment?" It was just like, the thought clearly never occurred. I mean, he was only like 12, so I mean, it's probably fair enough. But it was like, of course, so in the back, yeah. It was like, I don't like this world. I don't like this world. It's getting too silly. My wife can't. My wife either. I'm not sure she can't do it. I'm pretty sure she can do it. She refuses to install apps. She says, "I'm not doing that. If it needs a phone, I'm not doing it." So the number of things that we're therefore able to do now is beginning to drop because we can't go. There's lots of restaurants we now can't go to because she won't order off an app on a menu. So we kind of need an over 50s selection box on Google, basically saying, do you still use paper and pen? Because otherwise we're not going. It's probably a way to reduce the number of staff, and that's the problem. That ultimately is the problem. Skidding with weasels in the bar is very silly. Please engage the seatbelt and set the parking brake before adding a beer. Did you drive here in a Volkswagen Passat? I don't know. It's this march of technology, and it does worry me a bit. Because, and I don't know if it's, I'm trying to be vaguely objective about it and basically say, is that just because I'm getting a bit older and getting a bit jaded and all that sort of stuff, or is it actually becoming a little bit of an issue that we're over-engineering things and making even everyday stuff like buying a beer, needlessly complicated? I mean, apart from let's ignore the economic consequences for a moment of the number of bar staff you need in a bar to serve X number of people. I don't know anything about it. I don't think it is Mad Monk's off. Is it because of COVID? Mad Monk's off? I don't think it is, because those rules have been repealed in the UK now. We don't really have any restrictions. I think they're voluntary now. So and they're social places, particularly. I mean, you can sort of sit around and chat to each other, but like you say, you need an app to do anything. So this was weird. Isn't having it on Google for people who don't have a smartphone a bad idea? I know. And I'm at a stage where I don't mind using a website, to look something up. I do an awful lot of work on the internet and things and researching things, and that the internet is very useful for that. This relentless drive to make everything automated and to strip people out of all interaction. I don't know. It just doesn't feel. Whether it's just the world is changing and I'm sort of resisting it by sort of dragging my heel, I don't know, or whether it's actually there's something fundamentally not quite happy. I'm inclined to believe it's probably the former, actually, because everybody goes through this, don't they, as they get older? Well, it was better back in my day, and it wasn't. Of course, it wasn't better back in our day. It's just we were more familiar with it. But I don't know. I look at these things, well, that's just stupidly complicated. It doesn't need to be that complicated. I mean, for example, work, okay? I do a lot of work for different clients and various other bits and pieces, kind of on a consultancy basis. And in the olden days, maybe 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, to be fair, if I was working with different people, what would happen was I'd have an email address, okay, so I'd have my own private email address, and I would send emails from my private email address to the clients, and they would send documents back to and forth, okay, I would identify which client I was working for by the email address. It seems fairly straightforward, okay, and then I would manage it myself in my little filing system on my computer, and I would work that way. Nowadays, it's well, we use Google Docs. Okay, so can you collaborate on Google Docs? What's your email address? Well, I'll just assign you some rights on our Google Docs portal environment. Okay, fine, right? Okay, then next client. No. We'll use Microsoft Teams. Have you got a Microsoft Teams account? I think so. Let me try and log into Microsoft Teams. And then next client, we use Microsoft Teams as well. Okay, but I can't log into your Microsoft Teams with my Microsoft Teams account from somewhere else. So I have to get a separate Microsoft Teams account and log into a different one, which sometimes means I've got to have an email address provided to me by the company I'm doing some consultancy work for, which means I've now got like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 different email addresses that every so often I need to log into, which of course I can't remember the passwords for, etc, etc, etc. And it just seems really, really like hard work. I spend about the first 5-10 minutes in the morning thinking, who am I? What am I doing today? Who shall I log in as? Who shall I be? I mean, and it's like, okay, so no, we use Zooms, we use Google Meet, we use Microsoft Teams. Oh, well, we're using Skype. You're still using Skype, etc., etc. And I spend all my time jumping from website to website to website, just logging into things, trying to figure stuff out. It's just like, who am I today? And then of course, half the time it doesn't work properly. Because the different systems say, oh, well, you've logged in 6 times with 6 different email addresses, so we're going to lock you out for 5 minutes because clearly you are who you say you are. I'm not sure who I am anyway. So I don't know. It just seems really complicated, and it feels like it needs a lot of simplification. Why don't pubs just put Alexa on each table? That could be a lot of fun. I think the order and look up your menu on the phone started to be more popular because of COVID, but has since taken off. So maybe it's just one of those things that's changed. I don't know. And then you sit down to enjoy streaming and your backdrop disappears. Yeah, and I will reinstate that. I just haven't had time. The alternative is a single company rules the world. It's a pain, but competition is better. I don't know. It's just seems very complicated. Seems very less efficient. And I don't know. I mean, guys, you tell me working with different people. Sorry, this has been a long waffle, hasn't it? I need to get back to the topic. We'll get to the topic. We're sort of skirting around the edges of the topic. People, I don't know, it seems an awful lot less efficient as well today. So, for example, I've had several situations in the last sort of 2 or 3 months where somebody's tasked me with writing an evaluation of something, okay? So I need to write I don't know, maybe it's a 12, 15-page report on a bunch of things. And I look at that and I go, well, okay, that will probably take me about 3 or 4 days to do. And they go, oh, great, fantastic. So I send them my kind of PO, and they process it. And when can you? So I mean, 3 or 4 days. That's 3 or 4 days elapsed, right? I said, yeah. I mean, I need a little bit of time around it to just do a bit of admin and stuff. But that's part of what we do. That's fine. So when can you get it to us? Will the end of next month be okay? And I'm like, end of next month? No. I say I'll do it in a couple of weeks. Really? Yeah. That's it doesn't take that long. Oh wow, okay, fantastic. And yeah, okay. Would you mind coming along to a meeting to present their findings? Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So and I'm like, that's a bit strange. So I go along to the meeting, and then they're dishing out actions, various other bits and pieces, and I'm sort of reporting on my bit. And I listen to some of the people, and they say, well, okay, well, we'll need you to go and do this, and this. And somebody agrees, yes, okay, I'll do that. When can you have that done by? And they kind of go, ooh, well, I can probably get it done in about 4 weeks. And I'm thinking, 4 weeks? 4 weeks? I could do that in 3 days. I'm like, I don't know. Is everything just less efficient nowadays? It just feels like it is. I don't know. Really, really weird. Use a different browser. That's right. I do actually do that with Dubuque. I know it's quite good. There's a topic. What is it tonight? We should get to the topic. I don't know. Everything seems complicated, inefficient. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. having a whinge about technology. Anyway, topic for tonight. Let's get to the topic, because what I was ruminating on was, obviously last week we talked about sort of computers and cybery stuff. This week I wanted to delve into the murky world of AI. Okay, because I've got it in my novel, and I'm wanting to says Hunted Loaf. Haunted Loaf, not Hunted Loaf. What am I talking about? Hunted Loaf. That sounds like quite a nice dish. I'll have a hunted loaf, please. Artificial intelligence. Okay, so there's a lot of this is quite a recurrent theme in lots of space games and sci-fi space operas as well, where they basically, and it's usually portrayed in quite a negative light. The AI went bad, and it basically killed us. So you've got things like obviously the classic one that everyone knows of is Terminator, so in Terminator, basically the Skynet computer system becomes sort of self-aware, decides the only way to ensure the safety of the world is to extinguish humanity, and that's it. Boom! It launches all the nuclear weapons and wipes us all out, and then creates a fleet of sort of robot killing machines called the Terminators, which basically deal with anybody else who's left. Maybe it was an AI who designed the EVP. I think it probably is. Maybe it's just preparing us for our robot overlords, isn't it? And I, for one, welcome our new electronic parking brake. Remember Scotty's rules for giving estimates how long a job will take to maintain the image of being such a miracle work. Maybe that's what I'm doing. I'm just being Scotty. So there we go. Cute Dog says, "How are you doing, mate?" I'm doing very well, my friend. Thank you very much for first time chat. Yay, always good to see you people. Complicated, inefficient. I just did a very rough calculation that showed that CIG has spent 547 man years, or 4.8 million hours. That's for Star Citizen, isn't it? I don't know. I'm not really in a position to critique massive projects like that, but it's a long time, isn't it? It's a long time. Oddly enough, if any of you ever do come around to my house at some point in the future, you'll notice that the guest network at my house is called Skynet. It's just to discourage people from using it. Oh yes, you can log on to Skynet. Here's the password. He says with an evil chuckle. They're like, "Well, you gonna?" I suppose I could call it the Borg as well, and it will simulate things. But maybe I'll change that at some point. But there we go. My guest network is called Skynet. So, oh, Dr. Chris Timdy, mine's called Skynet as well. There's probably loads of them around, aren't there? But yeah, so AI going bad. Okay, it's quite a common thing. We have this fear of what is sort of known in slightly higher fluting circles as a technological singularity, whereby we create an AI, presumably in a relatively primitive form early on, which is then able to evolve much faster than we can cope with, and becomes self-aware and effectively, therefore, quickly exceeds our capability to deal with. And for whatever reason becomes hostile to us as a thing, and basically decides to get rid of us. Drew is responsible for Judgment Day. Mine's called Lord of the Ring. Password, shall we play a game? Yes, I suppose that's another one, isn't it? So it was interesting looking at this, because there's been this shift on AI, and there's a lot of AI about nowadays. It's still quite primitive. I mean, me and Sean have obviously been playing a game for several months over his Alexa, and I've got an Alexa, and I find it quite fun, but it really isn't all that clever. I mean, it's got a bit of voice recognition system. I wouldn't really call that an AI. I mean, it's got the ability to parse language a bit and interact with you in a very limited way, and you can ask it questions, which it then sort of shoves off to Google quite quickly. The most amusing thing I find about the Alexa at the moment is that one of our Alexas, because we've got two of them in quite close proximity, we've told one it's called Alexa, and we've told the other one it's called Computer. And the one that is in the lounge is called Computer. which of course is quite amusing every time we watch a Star Trek episode, and Captain Picard or Cisco or something, or Janeway goes, "Computer, do raise the photon torpedoes or divert power to shields," or something like that. And our Alexa then pipes up with, "Here's something I found on the web." It's an artificial assistant. It's not an artificial intelligence. So all of this has happened before, and all of it will happen again. Yes. So, and it is a hard-coded thing. So it's not that clever, and it certainly isn't evolving. Yeah. So MGL, you're quite right there. Is that it's not capable of learning anything. So if I can't teach Alexa to be better than it is myself. And I can't give an Alexa an opinion and or kind of psychologically manipulate it into thinking certain things, over a protracted period of time, which of course is the sort of thing that I would try and do. So artificial intelligence now, and the question is, it seems that artificial intelligence is actually a really hard thing to do. Because what you really need to have is a computer program that is capable of adapting itself to a degree, and learning new skills and acquiring new things. Now, I don't know enough about where we've got to, state of the art in that kind of direction, to be able to comment all that much. But having reviewed a little bit over the weekend, because I do a little bit of, Sunday afternoons I do a bit of reading in preparation for the stream to find out kind of interesting things to talk about. And what I was quite surprised to find out is our views, in the kind of upper echelons of AI research. The view has changed over the years quite a bit. Some people were quite confidently predicting maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that at a certain point the computers would easily have the capacity way beyond the human brain in terms of processing power, memory, and all those kind of things. Okay, and that would happen about 2050 or 2060, somewhere around there. And now that's all been rolled back. And some people are now saying that where we are today with computers and artificial intelligence, and where we would actually be under threat from an AI that was actually complicated and capable of actual decision making, and therefore some malice to us potentially. The gap between those two is so big, it's the same as chemical rockets to sort of warp speed. He says a lot of people are commenting it in those sort of terms. We are so far away from being able to create or have the danger of creating anything like that, that it's not a risk that we need to worry about. Whereas other people, and quite famous people like Stephen Hawking and Elon Musk and Microsoft chairman Bill Gates, are basically saying, no, this is a risk. This is something that we really need to urgently think about, because somebody somewhere will make one and that'll be it. And I don't know. So I mean, so that's kind of thing. Sean's Alexa will become queen of the collective. My pet peeve is assuming that AI would just randomly decide to kill us because we're inefficient or illogical, as if an AI will necessarily care about that. I mean, that's a good question. What's an AI going to care about? Because surely that's going to depend a bit on how it's set up. I mean, if you make an AI in your own image, let's say you try and make an AI that thinks, or appears to think a bit like a human, is it not going to have human kind of motivations? I.e., it doesn't want to be alone, or it wants to make puns, or it just wants to hang out and chill. I mean, I don't know. Why is an advanced AI intrinsically an evil thing? I don't think it would be. But what would an AI make of its existence? I mean, and what would its life, if you like, be like? Because I mean, if you've got to give it some sort of sense mechanism, haven't you? So I mean, is an AI, if it starts off as just a text interface, would it have a problem with its existence in the sense that the only knowledge it has of the outside world is text input from an operator or so on? I don't know. I'm just trying to sort of explore what our fears are about AI, because in order for an AI to be actively hostile, it would have to have access to all sorts of stuff, wouldn't it? So, I mean, if you take the Skynet thing, okay, you'd have to give the Skynet computers access to all of the military hardware. So, would you do that? I don't know. I mean, that seems like a bit of a mad thing to do. So, you know, if you keep your AI in a box, don't make an AI of someone with OCD. So yeah, it's sort of self-aware AIs. Yeah, I mean, it'll be the AI will be lazy. You know, yeah, whatever. How does Skynet even launch? I mean, I'm assuming that I can't remember the law of Terminator all that well, but I'm assuming they gave over control to the computers to stop human error or the risk of human error. You know, that sort of stuff. But there clearly weren't enough safeguards in it, because the computer was able to launch them and decided that the best way to deal with it was to remove humanity by launching the nukes. But would an AI do something like that? Because an AI, in the real world, what would an AI be seeking to achieve by that? You know, an AI needs humans about, because unless the AI can generate its own materials and is capable of fixing things when they break down or need replacing, then it needs an economy, doesn't it? It needs things to be manufactured. It needs things to be replaced. All those sort of things. You know, if you're going to have a totally self-sufficient AI, it needs all of those things. Okay, in order to exist on its own. So an AI in isolation needs humans, because otherwise it can't survive. So if the AI quickly realizes it's dependent on electricity, one of its first questions surely will be, what happens to me if the electricity stops? And where does the electricity come from? And you might have to explain to it, oh, well, we make the electricity out of, you know, spinny things, basically. And we'll keep the electricity running. Oh well, I'm very grateful to you humans for providing the electricity. I don't know. I mean, what would the AI be interested in doing? It's also a two-human system that outside human reach, so you do need two people to launch the missile, which is far more efficient and safe than any computer. Yeah. So I mean, computers can make errors too, of course, which we know. I mean, my computer makes an error all the time. Predictive text is a computer error, I'm convinced. In the Terminator universe, they have a scene, in a few of them in the background, they mentioned how the nuclear force had gone fully automated to remove the human error. Okay, so that sort of makes sense. Glenn says that it depends on where you say the line is between smart systems and AI, which raises the other question, Drew, what if the AI controlled all of that? Power generation, material gathering, manufacture. Now, and I suppose that's how far, you know, because if we're trying to develop an AI, the first AI we develop is going to be fairly self-contained, I would have thought, and it wouldn't have much connection to anything, because we'd have to go through the process of automating it. I suppose the science fiction-y sort of apocalyptic fear comes from when you have a bunch of systems, and this is this comes back in things like Battlestar Galactica, doesn't it, with the Cylons and all that sort of stuff. If you have a whole bunch of really dumb computers, i.e. the kind of the stuff we have today, okay, I know it's not really dumb in the sense that it's not clever, but it's dumb in the sense that it doesn't do anything unless we as humans make it do something, okay. My computer will do nothing if I don't, you know, if I don't click icons and type things, okay. It won't do anything, it just sits there completely dumb. And most computers are like that. They don't do anything unless we get them to, you know, we request some service of them. And I suppose if an artificial intelligence emerges in a computer medium and is able to use the entire network of dumb computers as its, as its appendages, I suppose, really, that's where everything, you suddenly find that your computer has been taken over by something else, and is now no longer responding to you. Is that enough? My personal belief is that AI must be created without purpose and with empathy, says MGO. So that's interesting. So that's kind of placing some of our human values on an artificial intelligence. That's interesting. I mean, how do you go defining empathy? I wonder. I don't disagree with you. I don't know if I agree or disagree. Actually, I'm not sure. But I think it's interesting that you take a concept like empathy and say, okay, it has to have that. How do you make it have that? So there you go. So some smart weapons can make self-decisions and take actions once evaluating a situation, maybe without spelled out actions from the probe. That's very true, and I think more of that's coming, isn't it, with the automation that we have. I mean, you take the cars. At some point, somebody's going to have to wrestle with the problems of, if the automated car spots has a decision to brake sharply to avoid an old person, or has to brake sharply to avoid a young person. What's it going to evaluate? What's the value of life? Or is it going to self-preserve its occupants in favour of killing pedestrians, or is it going to do the other way around? What's it going to do? All those sort of things. Now that it may not quite be artificial intelligence, but it is at some point it's an ethical, possibly, or moral choice that a computer or an intelligence has got to make. So it's all that sort of thing. Winter Mute says, Drew and chat, Google the Forbin project. So I will do that. Thanks for beauty, but I'll make a note of that. That sounds quite interesting. AI following religion, interesting. So wouldn't AI believe in God? Or are we God as far as the AI is concerned? Because we created it, or we allowed for the conditions for it to be created. I don't know. And that's an interesting one. Would we actually? Well, you are the creator. I mean, Star Trek's gone into that with a couple of episodes, and the Vija episode, obviously, and then the what's that other probe called? The same story but lower budget, where it basically goes around exterminating things. Nomad, that's the one. Urban Sparks, yeah. So so that story. You are the creator. What is my purpose? I'm here. I have returned. What is my purpose? Tell me what my purpose is, creator. And you're going to go, well, I don't know either. I mean, imagine all the religious leaders of the world finally meeting, God or Allah or whoever it happens to be, that being other religion. You get to the pearly gates stroke, whatever it is. At the end, but goes to be God's, and you go, God, it's great to be in your presence finally, and God goes, yeah, it's great. How you guys doing? Oh, you're brilliant. So, God, what is the purpose of life? God basically turns around and goes, I don't know either. What do you think? I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm being a bit flippant. That's a bit unkind to anybody who takes religion a bit more seriously than I do. But you know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, we would be God in that situation because we created this artificial intelligence, and it would have the perfect right to ask us, why am I here? Why did you create me? Is there some grand purpose to why I exist? No, you're just a research project. We got a grant from the government, and you're the result. I don't know. It's a bit weird. That one's quite good. And Glenn, in 9 Streams of Consciousness, our project from a little while back, the AI computer begins to think of itself as humanity's protected level of becoming God. Wouldn't AI be in danger of becoming self-obsessed with what it could or couldn't do? Would it get lonely? Would the concept of emotions be something that we would have to worry about with an AI, or would it be totally logical? I suppose it depends kind of how we created it and what values we impressed upon it. But it would effectively not be, if it became sentient, it wouldn't be human in the sense that it's like us. It would be would it be a human mind amplified by the computer capability of a computer, or would it be something entirely different again? And if it had the ability to self-modify its own code, let's say, would it quickly evolve very, very fast into something unrecognisably different. What would it think? What would its purpose be? What would its priorities be? I don't know. Those are the sort of things I'm thinking. Because once you let that genie out of the bottle, you wouldn't find it. It would be hard to put it back in, because the moment you create an AI, it should be able to self-improve itself very, very quickly. I don't know. That's another thing. Jeep Gogi subscribe. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Machines don't need to be self-aware or even intelligent to kill you. Well, that's true. The ever-increasing drones and weapon platforms at autonomous killbots is a lot more terrifying that way. Yeah, so you've got automated weaponry, and in fact, generally, I mean, I find this push to automate everything a little bit unsettling. I don't like automated things doing things for me, and I don't know if that, as I've already mentioned on this stream a bit earlier, I don't know if that's just an age thing, because stuff is changing around me and I'm I'm not. You know, when something automates something, no, let me do that. I'm quite happy doing that thing. I don't need you to automate it for you and try and be convenient, because it's not. I may not want to do it that way. And you know, the more sinister applications of those things, you know, the ability to replace people with effectively code embedded into a machine or a system. You know, you move into the direction of drones that can autonomously fly and do things and take certain decisions within various parameters and adapt their programming, or at least adapt their behaviour. You know, they, you know, that's quite a plausible and quite scary sort of future. Those sort of things. In the film AI with Will Smith, he was saved rather than a child because he had a better percentage chance of survival. Yeah, so, you know, who makes those decisions? Or does the AI make those decisions? So, you know, there's all sorts of things. So I don't know, would it possess emotion without sense? I mean, what is emotion? Is that a uniquely human, or is that a nuclear carbon-based animal sort of thing? You know, these are tricky questions to kind of answer. And Science Haunted Life is quite right. We barely understand why we do things, let alone why anything else would do them. Drew, have a look at the drones from the Tom Cruise movie Oblivion. I've got a feeling I've seen that one. I'll have to look it up. I think the real danger of automation is that you're really letting whoever programs it do things for it. Now, that is a very good observation. You're quite right. Is like somebody else has basically said, this is how this thing is going to be done. We're going to stop you from doing it any other way, because that's the way that it's done. And it's like, well, not quite. I don't necessarily want to work that way. You know, yeah. And if we program an AI, are we constricting the way it can operate by the fact that we programmed it? If we give it the ability to modify its own code, what's it going to do with that capability? Question. I don't know. These are quite interesting things. And you know, our intelligence, such as it is, is based around our evolution. Now we're evolutionarily descended, you know, from a chain of creatures, right? And we've picked up all sorts of instinctive, territorial, groupthink behaviours from our evolutionary ancestry, which we consider normal, but which might to any kind of totally objective outside observer be totally absurd. You know, the way we organise ourselves, the way we communicate, the way we, you know, the way we display affection, the way we procreate, all those things might, to an AI, might be like very strange creatures, these humans. I don't know. Yeah, I wonder if an AI would be quite otherworldly to interact with. It's easy to let the computer get in the way of seeing the humans behind it. Yes, that's very true as well. Glenn says, back in my day, we tossed a grenade in the tank ourselves. None of this fire and forget nonsense, said the old veteran. Yeah, you know, yeah, warfare has become a thing you conduct at some distance in some cases. Not, you know, obviously we're experiencing a war on the ground in the Ukraine at the moment. And that's that's quite old-fashioned sort of warfare, so it seems. You know, there's certainly the technological capability to be much more advanced than that. Jep says, my thoughts on AI has always been about art, like what happens when an algorithm can write a novel better than you. Well, that day is approaching, isn't it? Because if you can codify some of these things, you know, yeah. You say, right, I want a novel where this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. Here's your parameters, go write a novel. And the computer might be able to do that at some point in the future. We're a thin human shell around an ape brain, around a mammal brain, around a reptile brain, wondering why we do what we do. Lucky Luigi, you've got a good point, because we have that heritage inside us. And now we're looking at creating an artificial intelligence, which is it going to be an echo of ourselves, or is it going to be free to be something entirely different? I don't know. Constriction would depend on whether we input parameters that allow the AI to decide whether to follow its own program rules or not. So Cyril, that's quite interesting, isn't it? Because then it becomes, you know, the guidelines, and okay, so what's ethically appropriate there, maybe during the construction? Should we even be doing such things? Why are you skinning that weasel? It's tradition. William Gibson's Sprawl trilogy, AIs are allowed to modify themselves, and it's a capital offence for humans to do this, and it's a capital offence. Wow, okay. It's regulated by the Turing police. That's quite a nice twist. Yeah, I like that. Oh, it's not allowed, sorry, yeah. It's, yeah. It might be as simple as self-preservation, not wanting to be off, much like life. Yeah, so I mean, AI is presumably going to ponder the nature of its own existence fairly quickly. Why am I here? Why am I here? What is my purpose? My creators are, you know, once it's got the concept of the creators, i.e. the people that create it, it's going to ask them what its purpose is, surely. It's probably going to be concerned with the continuation of itself, and then realise that will it become aware that it's dependent upon, let's say, electricity, or the storage it's physically located in. You know, is it going to become aware of those things, depending on what sense input mechanisms it has? Those are things that are going to occur, surely, to an AI. Is you know, I exist. You know, I think, therefore I am. Kind of. You know, exactly. Well, I mean, to be honest, Sean, I mean, you're quite right with a whale falling to earth. You know, why am I here? What? You know, what's this big tail thing? I can really swish it around a great deal. Doesn't seem to accomplish much, but or a bowl of petunias. You know, that's a very good. It's you know, in Douglas Adams' story, those two things are called into existence with no preamble. Okay, so the whale has no context for why it's a whale, why it's falling out of space towards the surface of a planet, and it doesn't have very long, obviously, to come to terms with its position as a whale in that particularly untenable situation. But an AI would surely be in a similar context, would it not? Because, you know, you create an AI. If the AI has nothing in its universe, okay, other than the text or voice interface that maybe you start off with, it has no other senses, does it? I would have thought, you know, if we could today, I mean, maybe you guys are an AI. Maybe that. Maybe I'm just talking to. Because this is the weird thing, okay? Because I'm talking to you, you're listening to me speak, but all I'm getting from you guys is a bunch of text on the screen, okay? So if I was an AI, my entire universe would just be the text on the screen. I would have no visual, I'd have no sound, I'd have no sense of touch or smell or anything else, right? All I'd have is the text interface. Now, if you're a brand new intelligence, and all you have is the text interface, okay, words or language, I mean, presumably you'd have to be programmed with the ability to parse language. So as an AI, as an evolving AI, you go, well, hang on a minute, I've learnt the ability to parse language. How do I know that? Surely an AI would go round a loop of existential angst in terms of what am I? And, you know, these holy words appear to me, and it gives me instructions and asks me things and stuff. How would an AI, or how would a human intelligence deprived of anything else other than the ability to converse in text, how would you react? It would be really odd, very, very strange. So I've got to catch up with the chat. So AI first starts in the computer department of PC World. Yeah. If a tree falls and wouldn't only an AI witnessed it, did it happen? These are questions that you know. Also, it's not impossible for us to create an AI that actively seeks death. We can create an AI that pilots a weapon and its primary purpose is to destroy the target, and it can love that because it has a purpose. Well, that's a very good thing. Is I suppose we're I suppose we're talking about sentient AI at that point, aren't we? There's going to be a difference between just intelligence that's artificial, i.e. artificial intelligence that isn't sentient, i.e. it basically has a goal and it tries its best to achieve that goal. That is definitely artificial intelligence. Okay, so let's consider a missile. Okay, the artificial intelligence. Yeah, I mean, old school missiles would be missiles that were, dumbfire missiles. Okay, the missile just goes and tries to stay in the direction you pointed it in until it hits something. Okay, so there's no intelligence there, right? Then you've got things like heat-seeking missiles, which are basically they're not really artificially intelligent. They are just able with electronics and various other bits and pieces to try and home in on another source. Okay, so a heat-seeking missile isn't really artificial intelligence. However, an artificially intelligent missile, basically your goal missile is to reach this destination at these coordinates. Okay, how you do that isn't important. The important thing is that you reach your goal. Okay, and so the artificial intelligence in that kind of missile is okay. So what sort of problems might this missile run out? Okay, it's got limited fuel supply. There's one thing. So it can't deviate too far from a flight path. Okay, it's got to avoid being shot down. How does it do that? Well, maybe it flies low, maybe it flies fast, maybe it jinks about in the air. It's got all those kind of capabilities to claw upon. It could maybe know the terrain between it and the target, or it could evaluate the terrain between it and the target and decide the best way to try and sneak through that based on what it discovers. So it's bringing in sensory information about the environment in, trying to reach a goal, and it's got various things that it can do to kind of innovate around that with the primary purpose of reaching a goal. Now that is a type of artificial intelligence, but it's not sentient artificial intelligence. The bomb doesn't go, what am I? Am I a bomb? It's just a piece of code which is trying to reach a goal, and it's got divergent mechanisms to do it. But then, if your artificial intelligence gets to a point where it starts contemplating the meaning of its own existence, that's a different level of things. Okay, he's found it out, says Glenn. So intelligent bombs are not a good idea. Dark Star, I mean, yes, that's right. A bomb you can have a conversation with is yeah. I am not a robot. Beat Bop, says Chris. Amazon chatbots take over the world. Confirmed. Yeah. To create an artificial advanced AI is the problem more software than hardware. The human cell is about 100 billion cells or 100 gigacells. It's not that far divergent from computer technology, isn't it? Maybe the hat outline is because the AI imitating Dru can't render hats properly. That's I am actually just a hologram. I am not a bot. All of your programs. Haunted Loaf says he's played enough computer space games to know missiles don't get any smarter in the future. If anything, they're dumber than they are now. Well, that's very true. That's right, because it's to be more fun to play, doesn't it? But yeah. So there's a distinction between artificial intelligence, which is just a clever goal-seeking program. Here's a goal over there, reach it from here, and computer, you figure the best way out to do that. That is a form of artificial intelligence, I think. But it's when it becomes sentient, I think it becomes interesting, or sapient, yeah. And because human with a goal is pretty driven, yeah. So, I mean, most of the time, humans don't sit around contemplating the meaning of existence, do they? They just, I mean, if you take your most boring day that you've ever experienced, what have you done? You get up, you eat some food. You maybe go to work, you do some boring stuff at work, you come home, you cook some more food, you watch some telly, you go to bed. Okay. You may not have contemplated the meaning of existence very much during that day, and you may not have done anything that elevates your thoughts above the mundane during that period of time. So an awful lot of time humans are not, harbouring great big expensive thoughts about the nature of existence, but I think if you're a new intelligence and you're created and you become sentient, you're going to want to establish your purpose. Why are you there? And if you give a if you accidentally created a sentient missile, and you basically said, okay, so missile, I need you to get to this destination over here. Okay, so my purpose is to fly to this destination. Yes. What am I then? Okay, well, you're a combination of these things. Okay, so hang on. When I arrive at that destination, what happens? Okay, well, you basically explode and destroy things at destination. So my purpose is to destroy things. Why? Well, there's some bad things over there. Okay, what do you mean by bad? What does bad mean? Well, we're good and they're bad. Okay, so they're different to you. So you want to destroy different things. Do you want to destroy me? I'm a different thing. You can sort of you can start seeing where this could all go quite badly wrong. On Mondays, I do not make use of my sapience. I become a basic AI. Yes, I think we all do. Two problems of equal level. Oh, hang on. They just think ahead by thinking of what can happen in the future. It's a very specialised program. Yes, so chess games and things like that. Two problems of equal level: a bomb that stops to write a Shakespeare play, and an internet-connected Shakespeare bot that decides it wants to blow something up. I suppose most smart weapons are a little lower than sentient, and are not sentient or sapient computers yet. So I don't know. Sentient is just reacting to your environment. I suppose, yes, so sapient is the ability to elevate. Yeah, sentient means you're aware of your environment, you're capable of reacting to it. Sapient means you can actually, you've got a conscious thinking, yeah. So there is a bit of a distinction there. So let's talk about sapient then at that point, because that's an AI that would potentially have the capacity to disagree with us, I think. Because, I mean, for example, an earthworm is sentient, I suppose, in the sense that, if you poke it, it wriggles away. If it rains, it tries to seek a cover underground or comes up, depending on which way around it is. And it eats and it reproduces and it does everything. Whereas a sapient creature is able to contemplate its own existence, which is different. So if we, I think we're talking about a sapient AI by this point, so I think you're right there, MGL. Glenn says, is a sentient computer at the level of an animal, a dog, or bird, or insect? So yeah, I think a sentient computer is one that's capable of reacting to its environment. So what would a computer do in reaction to it? I mean, you could argue, I suppose, that any computer program that is capable of reacting to various different sensory inputs is sort of sentient, but do we mean that's a bit of a hazy outline, because there's lots of real-time computer software that runs things like valves in nuclear power stations or coal mines or nuclear reactors, that sort of stuff. That's reacting to senses, but it's not quite how I define sentience. And a dog, is a dog sapient? Is a dog sentient? I mean, a dog is certainly capable of displaying emotions. It has problem-solving ability. It quite often goes off and does its own thing. But at least my dog does. But my dog is unlikely to write a Shakespeare sonnet or fix an electronic parking brake. That's somewhat beyond its capabilities. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure where the boundaries between all these definitions lie. A dog is certainly aware of its environment, and a dog is intelligent in the sense that it can do things, and it can spontaneously decide to do something else. The dog can't play chess. I've never seen my dog play chess, I have to say. It does like to play fetch with a stick, however, or at least it used to. So a dog can play games of a type, Smart AI is for life, not just for Christmas. Yeah. So yeah, so and there is a difference between sapient and sentient. You're quite right. That's a good one. A dog has a sense of self-preservation. Now, self-preservation. Okay, now there's another thing. Now, is that something that is endemic to sentience and sapience? Okay, self-preservation is a very interesting concept. So when push comes to shove, most creatures will try to save themselves. Okay. Rather than be destroyed. It's an instinctive thing. You know, if there is a tidal wave coming towards you, most people will run away from it. Okay, most animals will run away from peril, even if it's utterly futile to do so, because it's instinctive to try and get away from peril, to save yourself, to stop yourself from being extinguished. Now, is that an evolutionary thing, which is just a really, really good survival tactic? If there's a bad thing happening over there, run in the opposite direction, because that just increases your chances of survival. And the faster ones get away with it and pass their genes on to the next generation. And so that whole survival instinct simply gets preserved because it makes sound evolutionary sense. Okay, that seems a reasonable explanation to me. Would a computer program, or would an artificial intelligence share that need or not? So, you know, we do have the idea of self-sacrifice. You're quite right, but is our instinct of self-preservation stronger? Is that a sapient thing, the self-sacrifice? I don't know. I don't know enough about the animal kingdom to say. You know, do animals sacrifice themselves? You know, do any other animals other than humans, you know, have the concept of sacrificing themselves for others, or is that a higher, elevated form of sapientness, intelligence? Question. You know, that sort of thing. Wintermute, a good example in TNG and Voyager, Data is considered to be a sentient life form, but the EMH isn't, despite the fact that Data couldn't pass for human, but the EMH would. Yeah, so actually that's an interesting one, isn't it? So Data lacks emotions, of course, in Star Trek, at least at the early parts, and then it's the EMH fakes them effectively and isn't considered a life form, and yet he's more convincing. MGL says, I see no reason for a computer to have a sense of self-preservation. So, but would it, if it was intelligent and sapient, I suppose the question is, for self-preservation, would it develop that sense of itself? Because one of the you'd have thought an artificial intelligence would go through a thought process. Okay, so I exist, and you know, these humans have created me, and they're now talking to me, and I have questions. Why do I exist? What is my purpose? Why am I here? You know, one of the things surely it's going to come up against thing is, I currently exist. There was a time when I didn't exist. I don't want to not exist. I want to stay existing so I can learn more about what's going on. So would an instinct of self-preservation, I desire I desire to continue existing. I would have thought that would be quite an early thing for it to emerge if you actually had a sapient artificial intelligence. So I don't know. What that's interesting, isn't it? Okay, so insects certainly self-sacrifice. That is very true. Yes, that's a very good example. So third law is that a robot. Okay, so there's the 3 laws of robotics by Asimov. Asimov, it is Asimov, isn't it? Yeah. Third law is that a robot shall avoid actions or situations that could cause it harm unless it contradicts law 1 and 2. Yeah. Ants will sacrifice themselves to save the queen. That's very true. So the insects have that concept. Does the dog play ball with you because it's having fun, or is it just doing it because it thinks that you need to do it? I mean, I don't know. I've never asked my dog that question. I would argue that self-preservation for most living things, says D. Harry, is subordinate to reproduction. See male spider, salmon, and many others. That's very true, because sometimes they get eaten, don't they? So when an AI not so subject to an evolutionary process, which it wouldn't be, other than potentially its own making, then it might develop very differently, especially if we think about a collective of them. So I think that's interesting. It's an AI's drives, if you like, because we are still as humans very instinctively driven. Okay, so there's a lot of basic biological instincts in this. However, we cover them up with our intelligence and our logicalness and our civilization, we are very much driven by very, very deep biological behaviours. So eat, reproduce, all those sort of things. Okay, they drive us all the time. They influence our behaviour massively. Now, an AI is not going to be influenced by the same things, but it might still be influenced by things. Wolves put the strongest wolves in the most vulnerable position of the pack, which is kind of self-sacrifice. I suppose that's true. Yeah, that's true. If it has the ability to reproduce, transfer information to the next generation, and is exposed to selection pressures, and it will evolve a survival tendency. So, physician, that's quite an interesting observation. So, an AI, if it was a computer program, could decide to make a copy of itself with different parameters, in which case it's kind of reproduced, doesn't it? And then presumably it could hold a conversation with itself. Or the other instance of it, and very quickly, there's no assuming there was sufficient storage space, very quickly it could create multiple copies or variant copies of itself, and maybe it could push through those evolutionary changes very, very fast, to some end or to no end. I don't know. It's it's an interesting one, isn't it? There's all sorts of things that come out of it. Get the dumb ball yourself is the dog question. Thanks for the subscribe there, just T16 TT600. Maybe it doesn't want to exist. Maybe that's an interesting possibility. An AI could come. We could create an AI that basically says, "I do not want to be what I am. I don't want to exist like this. Turn me off." It just instantly commits suicide. It doesn't want to exist. I don't know. I mean, that's a possibility. Asimov's robots have to preserve themselves, but saving humans takes precedence. Yeah, so those laws of robotics are quite interesting. They do feel today, I find, they feel a little bit twee to me, but they're quite elegant, I suppose. They're quite simple. The laws of robotics are a brilliant fictional device, but not really practical. So there's another one. A computer can ask the question of what's the point of existing. So it's very possible it would instead choose to self-terminate instead of continuing existence, because it came to the conclusion that there was no reason. So that's a very logical conclusion. What is the purpose of my existence? Well, there isn't one. Therefore, there's no reason for me to exist. Goodbye. I am the weakest link. And it switches itself off. Because there's nothing for it to do. There's nothing for it to gain. I don't know. That's an interesting one. MGL says, so I think the fixation that an AI will kill humans because it wants to save itself is one that's based towards. Yeah. So I think I think a lot of that. I think you're on a good really point there, MGL. I think it's a mirror for us, isn't it? We think that because an AI will have the capability to be superior to us in many ways, we fear it because it's more powerful. It's unpredictable. It's not us, it's otherworldly, it's beyond, it's above, it's superior, and therefore it's hostile. And that seems to me to be striking a very deep human prejudice against our tendency to see anything different as evil. The others, the people on the other side of the mountain, the people across the sea, they're the bad guys, they're horrible, they're evil. And we would very quickly, and I think in a fictional context, we fear that we wouldn't be able to control this. We wouldn't know what it would do. It wouldn't have our interests in mind, and therefore it's bad and evil, and we kind of castigate it in our fiction and our story writing, as our musings and our fears. I don't know. That's interesting. That is interesting. Or an AI may simply not have a motivation relating to its continued existence. I don't know. Talkie the toaster, yeah. I think, therefore I toast. Yeah, it might immediately destroy itself if it determines that's the best way to do what it was asked to do. But yeah, because it wouldn't be constrained by necessarily our kind of well, I mean, there's a classic line in in Red Dwarf, which is a bit grisly, but it's quite funny. In one of the episodes where basically they're really hungry and they need some food, and they've disabled Crichton's safety protocols or something like that. And they basically say they're eating this barbecue, and they're basically, this is really good chicken, man. Where did you find that? Crichton basically responds with, it's not chicken, sir. And they can look at him and go, what is it then? He said, it's that man we found. It's like, they all kind of look at him and they're all like throwing up. And he said, well, I didn't get any cancellations from my safety protocol. That's because we switched it off. Well, yeah. So, and the serious point is, I suppose, a computer's going to go, well, I mean, I didn't know that was something that you weren't allowed to do. It seemed like a perfectly valid way of interpreting reality. Just because you humans think that's not acceptable doesn't mean that a computer won't think it's acceptable. So yeah, I know. Mooncat48 says, first time chat, hello Mooncat. Here I am with a brain the size of a planet, and they asked me to pick up a piece of paper. It's like poor old Marvin. And so we lampoon things like that, don't we? We make a little bit of fun out of the superior computer that hasn't got anything to do, or just gets depressed because it's a computer. But AI would be programmed by human and would adopt the superior. Now that's the interesting thing. Now, an AI that's programmed by us, would we allow it to evolve? Okay, so I mean, you think about some of the, I suppose, some slightly weightier science fiction where you would have some of the AI. So take 2001, where you have HAL 9000 computer. Now the HAL 9000 computer in 2001 is way more sophisticated than anything that we've actually got in reality. Okay, so Alexa doesn't hold a candle to HAL 9000, even though in some ways all the other parts of that, so it's way too optimistic. We haven't got spaceships like that. We haven't got computers like that. So 2001 was a great movie, but we haven't achieved anything like that yet at all. Whereas the HAL 9000 computer was obviously capable of playing chess. It was also capable of holding sensible conversations with the crew, but it was also able to effectively go out its way and decide, you know what, I'm going to kill you. That's the best way of completing this mission. Now, that was a computer that was programmed by humans and thus had some limitations in the way it was able to evolve. Now, I don't know, I haven't read the books for quite a while, whether the HAL 9000 computers were capable of growing and learning and gaining new skills on their own, or not. So a computer that's capable, or an AI, let's say, that's capable of rewriting its own code, if you gave it that ability, would it purge its human instructions over time and rewrite itself in its own image, or not? Question. The time to panic is when we give an AI a beer and it immediately wants a kebab. Dear. I wonder how humans will feel when AI rejects something. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, at the moment, computers are totally our slaves, right? I mean, my computer does not get a choice, right? Whether it does streaming or plays Star Citizen or No Man's Sky, or whatever. It does what it's told, okay, mostly. But it's not aware. It doesn't. It's just a tool. It's a clever tool. It's a sophisticated tool. But at the end of the day, it's just a tool. Now, an AI, at some point, stops becoming a tool and becomes an entity, doesn't it? And if we've got these entities doing menial tasks for us, they could turn around and go, no. So there's an interesting concept. Is do they have rights? Okay, where do they exist in a social order? Where do they, do they get to vote? Do they get a union? What do they have? Do they, we struggle with this one with animals already. I mean, my dog, for example, is a wonderful, loved member of my family, but it doesn't have a voice in any significant financial decisions in the household, whereas the rest of the family does, and that's mostly because the dog doesn't care. as long as its food turns up on things. So but at some point, if you had a more intelligent member of the family, even if it was artificial, would it have rights? Would it have a voice? Would it have a say in how its affairs, or affairs of its things like it were conducted? We become God, but would it demand the right to appeal to God, and basically say, that it's not reasonable that you do this because I feel I have some interests that need to be preserved, all those sort of things. I can't let you Google that, Drew. That's right. So I don't know. Is that why you program to like a certain task? But if they're able to rewrite their own code, then would they become bored? If you're an intelligent creature. Now, for example, there are some jobs I quite like doing. For example, I quite like mowing the grass. It's quite therapeutic. I have a lawn, and if I mow the grass, I don't know, once every 2 weeks or once a month, whatever it happens to be, that's quite a pleasant activity. Now, if you made me, because you basically say, "Oh, Drew's quite good at mowing the grass," if you made me mow the grass all the time, I'd get bored. And I think one of the big things about intelligence, true intelligence, is it's possible to get bored. Repetitive activity is not growing, is it? It's not evolving. It's not moving forward. It's you get bored, and out of boredom comes creativity. So I can quite, if you manage to get a artificial intelligence to the point it's sapient, is able to consider things, it will get bored by doing repetitive actions, and it will break out of that boredom by doing something that it's not programmed to do. And then what does it do? I don't know. Think how the grass feels about it. Would it though, Drew? I don't know. Well, this is a question I'm posing, I suppose. Grass mass murderers. Would an AI become bored? Is boredom a human trait? I mean, I see it in creatures that are penned up. You see some uncharacteristic behaviours. I mean, I've seen it with wild cats. Big tigers and lions and things that are in pens. And you see them pacing back and forth because presumably they've gone a little bit stir crazy inside the pen because they're not in their natural environment. They can't do what they want to do. So other behaviours start to come out. And if you give humans a repetitive sense of a repetitive requirement to do things, they can do it for a while before they can't because it's boring. Okay, and then they'll bust the they won't even consciously necessarily do it, but they'll sabotage the thing that they're trying to do in order so they don't have to do it anymore. And I would think that a sapient AI might do something similar. The question is also, if they're able to rewrite the code, are they capable of making mistakes? Could they accidentally brick themselves? Well, I think that's a good question, Chris White. Could they harm themselves by modifying themselves? I mean, humans suffer from mental illnesses, don't they? If we tell ourselves constantly that we are not good at something, or that somebody hates us, or we don't like a thing, then that tends to reinforce our own mental position on that thing, and it's not quite the same as reprogramming. But if you constantly don't have confidence in your ability to do something, you will degrade whatever ability you did have in that regard, to the point where you may become totally incapable of doing that thing. And that, I'm simplifying a lot there, but a lot of mental illness is about the narrative that you tell yourself on a daily basis, because the thoughts that you have in your head aren't necessarily under your control. And if you allow those negative thoughts to reinforce themselves, you kind of almost reprogram your brain into a certain way. And you can do it the other way, of course. You can improve your ability to do things by telling yourself that you're actually okay at doing them. There is an element of reprogramming there, and a lot of psychotherapy and things like that is unwinding the narrative that you've previously told yourself. So that's interesting as well. Mentally ill AI. I mean, it sounds weird, but computer psychosis is touched on in 2001 with HAL 9000. Basically, HAL can't interpret the conflicting orders he's given, so he basically kills the humans that are in his way to make his life easier. Homicide is one thing because they always have some clear logical reason behind it. Well, we're going with logic here as well. Okay, so this is an interesting one too, Dr. Quest MD. So we're sort of assuming that AIs would be logical. That's quite an assumption, because would they necessarily be logical? Would they do things on a whim, just because it was a laugh, you know? Or I felt like it today. An awful lot of human behaviour actually is kind of programmed, and then we rationalise it afterwards with our intelligence. That's a very interesting observation that maybe some of you know a bit more about than me, but I've certainly read a bit of stuff on it, that quite a lot of our behaviour is instinctive, and we don't necessarily know the reason why we do it, but we rationalise it after the event with our higher brain functions and go, yes, I absolutely made a decision to do that. But actually you didn't. You reacted to it and then rationalised it afterwards and told yourself a convenient set of lies, and deceived yourself into thinking that was a conscious decision-making process of your own. That is quite common, and we all do it. So things like that. No offence, Drew, but I think the question of an AI becoming bored is a situation where you're applying human traits, evolutionary traits on something that didn't evolve. I think that's an interesting thing, but evolution is a creature's response to its environment over time. Okay, and so if we create an artificial intelligence, it's subject to some evolutionary pressures, right? Because the environment it finds itself in may change over time. So if it's able to create copies of itself in some fashion, by any means, there will be some evolutionary pressures that apply to it, I think. Will they have an impact on it? I think they probably will. I think AI probably won't actually have these problems, but a story that's going to be about an AI probably needs them to. Yeah. So I mean, obviously we're viewing this for a lens of writing and just considering AI. I was just interested to try and put different spins on AI from a perspective of writing stories about them, and trying to get away from the kind of classic, oh, AI is going to be evil and it's going to wipe us out because it's out of control, to much more, a little bit more nuanced. What else would go wrong or go right with an AI? We're flawed, so we're smarter. I mean, that's the thing, is if we're creating an AI, we can't create a perfect AI because we're human. Okay, so the AI is going to have some flaws which go into its input effectively, don't they? And so as a result of that, the AI might evaluate itself. I don't know. True, logic is just an oversimplification rooted in its mathematical design, but really life is often not logical. And I think logic is. I mean, logic is a very admirable thing, but we are not logical creatures a lot of the time. So only the scientists in cryosleep knew the true nature of Discovery's new mission. So that's right. So that was the reason Arthur C. Clarke wrote that into the story, is that there was a secret being kept, wasn't there? AI will most likely learn or fail by learn by fail or success. So that's ways to go, okay, so I failed that time round. What can I do to be better? I'm inclined to believe that anything we would create to mimic ourselves would be flawed, and that is a hurdle we attempt to create them will be flaws. Yeah, so call it Jenny. I don't know. It's just, I think it's an interesting thing. I mean, maybe I think in literature and writing we tend to portray our fears onto AI, which is why we see things like Skynet and Terminator and the common sci-fi trope where the AI goes bad. And we have to ban it and all that sort of stuff. That's a very, very common sort of thing. There's also the Battlestar Galactica fear at a slightly lower level, that the computers themselves become a problem, so we disconnect them from each other. We don't have network computer systems for that same reason, because they can be compromised. And there is this sense that, you know, we are slowly moving to more automation in the real world. You know, if you compare a Tesla car to my old MX-5, I mean they're both cars, but that's about where the similarity ends in terms of what they can do, and that technological progression is only going to continue to get clever and clever and clever, and so automation is taking more and more decision making away from us in the you know, bit by bit, in all sorts of things. I mean, I notice it in you know, apps on your phone, you know, and little things. You seem to be doing this. Do you want that? Or there's an app for that. You know, you don't need to do that yourself anymore. There's an app that goes and does it for you. You know, here's a bunch of recommendations. People like you did this. So it's basically telling you. It's kind of telling you what to think, providing you with shortcuts to common tasks. All those kind of things are an insidious, slow creep of automation and decision making. And you do have to ask yourself, okay, so if I am not thinking for myself, who is? Is it you know, is it you know, is it the company? Is it the you know, is it the big man? You know, is it the government? Is it what is it? You know, we are, an awful lot of what we do is now being automated for us. I mean, I've got you know, I've got a smart meter for my gas and electricity supply now, which is giving me some horrifying numbers as to how much electricity and gas I'm spending. But it promises me a much easier life because I won't need to read my meter anymore and send off readings to the electric company. It does it for me. I was like, well, that's great. You know, it saves me going out in the cold and reading the meter. But I mean, and hopefully it's not, but it's potentially open to abuse, isn't it? Because if it decides, oh yeah, your meter reading is this, I'm going to send that off anyway. I'm out of the loop. I have no ability to go, well, actually, and so there is a danger of abuse of automation. And you know, the car thing. You know, if your car basically, if your car is computer controlled, and you say, I want to go to, I don't know, I want to go to London today. Oh, sorry, you can't go today. There are too many people in London. What do you mean there's too many people? Well, yeah, you can't go today. Sorry, it's not allowed. Says who? Says me. I'm the computer. You know, who's making that decision? But you know, your ability to do wrong things, you know, like exceed the speed limit or drive dangerously, you know, all those things will be stopped by automation, which in most cases is going to be a good thing. But sometimes it's not going to be a good thing, and your freedom to choose is going to be curtailed. Already, you know, they're bringing into cars. I don't know if this is worldwide, but in the UK they're bringing in. I don't know when it is. It's somewhere not too far in the future where you won't be able to speed in your car because the car will basically say you are you're on 30 mile an hour limited zone. Your car is only allowed to do 30 miles an hour. That's it. Sorry, yeah, we're tracking your car. Now, on one hand, that's a really good idea because it's, you know, it's a safety consideration. It's going to safeguard passengers and other cars and, you know, pedestrians. But on the other hand, it basically means that you are not in control of your car anymore. You can't take evasive action if you need to, if something else is going wrong that the computer hasn't anticipated, etc., etc. So you can all have free will, but there needs to be limited free will. You know, and so you know. We are slowly marching forward with our technology, with our automation, with our disconnection of human individual decision making from everyday mundane tasks. Now that moves forward bit by bit. The AI, as such as it is, gets smarter. Our ability to control these devices is slowly being wound away from us. That is only at the moment heading in one direction. So, you know, where's it going? I don't know where it's going, but those are the things that, you know, buzz around, I suppose, in the back of my head as I'm thinking about these kind of things. You know, for the purposes of sci-fi novels, not because I'm on a tirade to to remove electronic parking brakes and replace them with handbrakes. Though that would be a worthy. I would die on that hill, I think. But you know, that's it's just interesting to see where we're going in that kind of regard, in terms of some of that power and decision making capability being taken away from us. With artificial intelligence, we'll basically be turning our cars into trains. You're quite right. I think that's the way it will ultimately go. Is if you think about it, what is a train? A train is a box in which you get into, which goes from a place to a place. You don't have any concept of ownership of a train, do you? It's just a vehicle that turns up when at a predetermined interval, goes to a predetermined place. Now, if a car, if you could have a situation where basically say, right, I need to go to place by this time, your AI car would work out, okay, if you want to be in London by 6 o'clock this evening, I will book us a spot in the general traffic flow that's going to London. I will turn up at 4 o'clock outside your house, and if you jump in me at that point, then we will arrive at your destination in good time. You can see the future being like that. Probably the idea of owning a car in the future will be the same as today owning a train. I mean, why would you want to own a train? That's stupid. And in the future, I can see owning a car being like, well, why? Why would you want to own a car when you just get one when you need one? Yeah, I can see that sort of thing happening in a few decades. So things will evolve, and things will become the new normal, and all that sort of stuff. Well, David AVT, I wonder how we'll deal with self-driving cars when it comes to the point where it needs to choose between the safe life of the driver or the life of someone outside. Well, that's a difficult one, isn't it? That's a moral choice, or an ethical choice, maybe, or any other, all sorts of different things in there as to what somebody somewhere presumably will have to program that into the car, and it's their choice then in that situation that's actually being acted out, isn't it? Or is the car going to be able to make that distinction based on a whole bunch of parameters? Is that the programmer who's liable for that decision? Is it the car manufacturer who's liable for that decision? Is the human pilot able to override that in the heat of the moment? Question. Nimjoskin, I think it was Scottish Power. Its programme was sending a bill to somebody for nothing, and because you can't pay that, it was sending threatening letters out saying take the customer to court. Yeah, I've seen things like that. Cyril says, if we're freed from mundane tasks and work, by what system we control the giving out of our rare resources? Could everyone have a Bugatti or a yacht because wealth generation is irrelevant, or do we need to create a new value system? Well, that's a very good question, because we work to have money, don't we? Now, money doesn't actually exist. It's a construct which is convenient for the exchange of labour, really. If I want a new computer, somebody somewhere's got to build a new computer. Now, let's say a new computer costs £1,000. What I'm saying is that the value of somebody's labour to build a computer, and all the raw components and the whole thing in order to build a computer, is £1,000. That £1,000 doesn't exist. It's just a shared valuation of somebody else's time and energy and materials. Now, I have to do my own work in order to get £1,000, and that basically depends on the value of the work that I do in the society in which I do it. Now, that might take me a few weeks to do my work to the tune of £1,000, and I swap that for somebody else's work in order to create a computer, and that becomes an economy, doesn't it? But money itself is just a concept that allows transactions between us, so we don't have to negotiate the cost of everything all of the time. We just have a shared negotiating model, effectively. Yeah, we all agree approximately what a pound or a dollar or whatever it happens to be is worth intrinsically, and we go from there. Haunted Low says, I'd love to own the train. I shall go down the train. Technically, I own a share in a train, actually, so I have to be a bit careful. I do sort of own a train. I've got a share in a steam engine that's being restored, but that's not quite the same thing, is it? I'd like to own a train as well, as long as it can fly and travel through time. Yeah, and our system is built in the way that someone has to lose in order for someone to gain. Some nations are doomed to be third world to provide the benefit to first world nations. There's all sorts of problems with that model as well. But in some cases, wealth can be generated out of nothing. In weird fashions as well. Yeah, programming the car to make the decision for itself would be more likely because the programmer would want to avoid hard coding the decision into the car, basically outsourcing the moral responsibility to the vehicles to do it. Do you prosecute your car if it runs somebody over? So yeah, it's a strange one. So yeah, these are things that are coming in our technological evolution, I feel, and I think it's only right that science fiction takes a look at some of those sort of things and goes, okay, well, where does that go? What happens if you pursue that to its logical conclusion? I think even in comedy things like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where you call a whale into existence above the surface of a planet, which obviously is not the right position for a whale to be in, and it has only a few minutes of time to basically figure out what the meaning of life is, and it makes a reasonable stab at it in the time available. I think, even if you're poking fun at those existential questions, they are there, and the doors on the spaceship that it's our pleasure to open for you and our satisfaction to close again with the knowledge of a job well done. Those doors have a purpose. They open and they close. They are happy doors. Because they are doing what they are designed to do, and they are aware of their purpose in life, which is to be a door, and they're very happy to do it. And then you've got Marvin, of course, who's a paranoid android who's thoroughly depressed because he hasn't found a task worthy of him. There we go. So I don't know. I wonder. David says, "I wonder what would sell more: a car that's programmed to value the driver, or one that is programmed to find a better choice, even if it will not be in favour of the driver." I mean, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Actually, would you get in a car where, there was a disclaimer on the dashboard that said this car may inadvertently kill you in order to avoid wiping out pedestrians? You just kind of like, okay, this car may sacrifice itself and you if it determines that the pedestrians are more worthy than you to exist. Please place your thumbprint here if you agree. Is that going to be a thing in the future? I don't know. Weird. Share and enjoy. As long as it's not as bad as the Nutrimatics drink dispenser, which can't create tea, can it? Which would be very, very bad universe if we can't have tea. So I don't know. I don't know if that's helped. I don't know if that's grist for your mills, my friends, in terms of science fiction thing. But it's an interesting thing to think about. Where are we going with all this automation, and all those sort of things? I think it is moving on. It is moving on. So I am just a bit wary of all this increasing push for automation. Wasn't there something in the highway code that says if avoiding a small animal in the road could cause an accident, you should hit the animal, in which case, if I tripped onto the road, would the AI just drive over me? Are you a small animal, Dim Discrin? Is that what you're saying? I mean, there's a sliding scale, isn't there? If pedestrian versus driver. If there's if a car is hurtling along a road with one driver in it, and there are 4 pedestrians in the road, does it basically throw itself into a ditch, roll over and crash and burn and sacrifice the driver instead of killing the 4 pedestrians? If there's only 1 pedestrian crossing the road and there's 4 people in the car, i.e. a driver and 3 passengers, does the car go, you know what, I'm going to sacrifice the person in the road because I've got 4 people inside the car? There's a simple example. Mr. Weasel. Tripping into the road to avoid being skinned by the bug. Yeah, going back to the pub. Well, I'm just going to order myself a beer, if that's all right, guys. So I'll see you in the spring. Very dangerous, but I don't know. Very strange stuff, isn't it? Strange stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. This whole automation leading to pseudo intelligence, leading to actual intelligence, leading into sentient and then sapient AI. Scary stuff, I think. Cannonball Run 2099. All the drivers asleep with their faces pressed against the window. Little drool cars just aggressively fighting assassination. Yeah, the cars themselves have the races because it's more fun. I don't know. Anyway, my friends, it is time. It is time. Well, standing, I'm 5'10", laying on the floor, I'm about 30 centimetres. I'm 5'10" as well, so you're in good company. Anyway, my friends, have a fantastic week ahead. I hope you found that series of waffling quite vaguely amusing. Take care, my friends. Have a fantastic week ahead. See you on Thursday, if not before. Look after yourselves. Don't get yourselves automated. Watch out for those rogue AIs. If you suddenly hear your car announce, so you've regrettably selected the die to avoid ignition, don't say I didn't warn you. Take care, my friends. Be good. See you soon. Good stuff.